everybody, and welcome back to Writerly Conversations. This is season 3, episode 6. I cannot believe it's already halfway through the year. That's what's bananas. That is so crazy. That is so crazy. But anyway, I'm Britt. This is my channel, Britt Writerly. Check the t-shirt. Well, actually, it's a hoodie. That's me on top of a pile of books because I'm Britt Writerly and I read a lot and I write too. Anyway, if you're new here, this is a book and author too where I talk about the intersections of literature and culture, usually through Friday Writing Sprints where I give reading updates. No, Friday Reading Sprints where I give reading updates. Writerly Conversations where we have conversations like these about everything writing, and sometimes like quarterly book conversations also. And then not my honesty conversation, which has an extensive playlist that has not been updated in the last 6 months, but you got like 24 episodes. So if you're new here, the content is there. If you're not new here and you've been waiting, listen, if y'all only get one honesty vlog from me, no, it will be a doozy because your girl is cooking in the kitchen. Your girl has tea brewing. I just don't want to share it yet. That's the truth. I don't want to pour you a cup yet, but when I do, it will be hot and sweet. So don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. Good things come to those who what precisely. Okay, so now
I'm sitting here like thinking multiple things. Like we had just talked about it being June. So one, how we talked about it being June, but not realizing that June meant we were halfway through the year. Like that didn't dawn until you said it. And then two, thinking about like she's doing this because she hasn't had to do this in 6 months. So it's like I got a whole bunch of like, what else am I supposed to say and
get out? Legit. I'm just giving all my intro stuff.
It's making me giggle over here.
All the information. Here's who I am. If you're new here, welcome. We hope you stay a while. And if you are returning, welcome back and thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to let my lovely co-host introduce herself, and then we are going to kick off a really juicy topic. Not so much juicy as a topic that I feel like every writer has had to like ruminate on multiple times. So we're going to ruminate with you on this good day. Shay.
Hey everybody, I'm Shay. My channel is Shay with the Hobbies. I be writing, I be reading, I be creating. If that is something that you think you could be interested in, definitely come on over to my channel. I like Brit. Ain't really been doing as much as I could be doing. You know, there's that. I think I finished like maybe reading 3 books this year, maybe if that. God, it's been a year already is the thing. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of things brewing, but you know, you'll just have to wait a couple of more months to see things to fruition is the truth. So there's that. On to my lovely host for this month's topic in our conversation.
So today, as Shay is being swarmed by her puppos, if you know, you know, we're going to talk about knowing when a work in progress is done. This topic has caused me, you, your cousin, Shay, everybody so much angst. Because it's your baby, you love it, you don't want to put it out in the wild before it's ready. We've all seen stories that have been put out before they were ready, and we're like, whoa, let it not be me. So, you know, we have understandable anxieties around putting stories out too soon, but there is a difference between patience and procrastination. What is that line? We're going to get into that today with y'all. So the first question that we're entering this conversation through is, what are the risks of not knowing when a project is done? And I'll start us off. And it's not it's nothing that I haven't said before. If y'all have been with us for a while, you know. That though now I'm working on like two stories, Tales of Eliza Black and hashtag first romance, that for the majority of my channel when I first started, I was working on #first_fantasy. And A1 Day One subscribers know, and Shay knows very well, that I rewrote that story like 15 times. And it's not like #first romance is a romance.
15 is not an exaggeration either. Like, that's not even you being like hyperbolic or hyperbolic. I have you say the word. It's not that. It's the truth. Like, it really did get edited that many times.
It's factual, and it's not even like copy edits. It's developmental edits. It's revisions. It's rewrites of entire acts, if not the entire story, multiple times. Shay and another one of my amazing critique
bloodlines changed, relationships to the characters changed multiple times. Like, it was a lot. It was a lot. They went from best friends to sisters to cousins to, like, it was a lot.
It did. I was just shifting the family tree. Absolutely. That happened. The magic system changed a little bit. Like it got shifty for a second. For a long second, for a while, for some years. Leave me alone. The point is, I was really struggling with what the best iteration of #first_fantasy was, and it drove me great. It drove me out of my writerly mind. And so the risks I learned from not knowing when a story is done is that you risk losing your initial why for the story. Why are you writing this story? For me, it was I wanted to write the story that my 16-year-old self wanted to read. But the reason that I kept rewriting it was not for that 16-year-old girl. It was for agents. It was for editors. It was for it was for like published writers who graciously, yeah, it was for Shadowhub. It was off of the advice of like writers who graciously agreed to read it, but then would give me half-baked feedback that would send me spinning in a loop. Like it was other people starting to become more important to me than the 16-year-old girl that I was writing it for. And the longer it takes you to write, not even to write, right? Because like it don't take that long to write this story necessarily, but to call it done when it is written, like after the first draft is done, and then you're revising and revising. That's what we're talking about, getting in a revision loop. How do you know when enough is enough? And the longer you take to call it enough, the more voices you're letting in that distract you from your initial why and your initial who. Why are you writing this story? Who is it for? The longer you go between that first draft and that final draft, the greater the risk that you're going to lose that initial why and that initial who. That's what I would say.
Not definitely too many cooks in the kitchen, right? And we know like you can't have that. We know that can't be a thing. So I totally get that. So what I was gonna say, like kind of hits on the same thing. But you actually spawned a second thing that also like hits on the same thing. So for me, the two things that you risk are burnout and your mental health. And that comes from one, finishing, not finishing, and being the critique partner of watching someone finishing and not finishing. All right. Like I've watched you, I've watched Dejana, I've watched Tash, I've watched Becca, and all like know your stories intimately and go through them and everything. And I just know how stressful it is when you are like, no, this isn't right. I have to redo this. I have to redo this and redo this and redo this. And feeling like the story isn't there. Like when it's just you reading it. So just get into the other stages that revision required is even harder at that. And so for me, burnout and mental health being two big risks are why for me, like we say with books, like putting it down, like with a story, putting it down. Like, so, because to me, I feel like there are like multiple ways to be done with the story. You could be done with the story for now, and then you can just be done with the story. Because I feel like specifically like thinking about what you were talking about with #first_fantasy, there was a while that you needed to be done with the story. And I remember being like, I need you to stop it. Like let's switch to this other story. Like let's leave that one alone. Like, because it's like, no.
When your critique partner tells you you're in timeout, that's when you know that one, you've gone too far, and two, you have the right CP. Because you do need some people sometimes to be like, I'm calling it for you.
But it was because of how I saw it affecting your mental health. And that's what you talking about. It reminded me was like, I remember that time for you. And I remember how like it hurt to see you that way for me. Cause I'm like, my friend don't want to write. And my friend is a really good writer. And like, she's like, I don't even know I want to do this anymore. Like it was a very bad spiral to get into as a writer. And having that, like, I've had bad spirals in other directions, and knowing like you've had to like pull me out of those, like, no, come back. Like, this is one of those where it's like, no, when you get to the point where you are editing a story so much that for you, it feels like there's no end in sight. Like, it feels like there can't be a correct version of the story because no matter what I do, it's not right. Like, that's a bad place to be in mentally, especially for something that is not just a craft or a hobby, but is also an escape as well. Just as much as reading is an escape, writing is an escape for most of us, right? That choose to do this like consistently, whether it gets published or not. Like, it is a form of escape from whatever we're dealing with. And so to bring it to a point where it's just as stressful, like, that's never good, right? And so again, like you said, like having a CP that can point that out to you when you can't see it, right? Because again, like I said, we've done this for each other in different ways, not always with the story being done, but with other parts of the writing process. And so for me, that's like a big thing that you risk. And to me, there's nothing worth risking your mental health. Y'all know we talk about that constantly. Like, part of the reason why no videos from either one of us consistently, hey, we got other things that we need to do, and this is not the focus right now. And I'm not going to stress myself out trying to focus to do this content when it's like, this isn't even the main thing right now. It's just not. I can come back to this. It's always going to be here. This other things are more immediate and they need to get done. And then for the burnout, again, another part of your mental health technically, but when you're burnt out on writing, it shows in your writing. Like, it shows, like, it's like you didn't really care about this passage as much as you used to, huh? You just like, okay, it's fine, baby, but go ahead and rest a little bit. So, those are the two things I think that you risk in that. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. And this is once again a plug for taking the time to get a good team of critique partners around you. It's so important, not just for the writing, but for yourself as a writer, because writing is not like that. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. You're not going to be not okay in life and writing a pristine passage, right? Like, how you feel is going to affect how you come to the page. And so having critique partners where, and it may start off that it's just that they know you're writing really well, or that they get to know your writing over time, and that y'all, they can help you grow, you can help them grow. It might start off as that, I mean, and only that. But as the relationship grows, and it never has to mean that y'all are friends on a personal level, but even professionally, you have coworkers who you're like, Barb, you feeling okay today? Right? Like, just because when you work with someone, you get to know their work and what space of mind they are in when they do their best work. And you want to support them in that. And so having critique partners is not just about having someone who can help you grow in your writing. It is having someone who can hold you accountable and support you to be your best writer. And that's a human thing, not a craft thing. So shameless plug for finding quality critique partners, because a trash critique partner will stress you out also. So if it's not the right person, don't just stuff your life full of people who are not bringing no value. It takes time, but it's time definitely worth investing. Okay, that was good. We did good.
and it was over 10 minutes for the first question. I was like, I told you we don't need a bunch. I told you we don't need a bunch. No one asked. We good.
This topic is so angsty because it really does. It just goes everywhere. So yeah, we don't need that much prompting to just go off. And I like, and for those of you who are like newer here, I put hashtag First Fantasy on the shelf. Like, I shelved it over a year ago, I think, maybe. And yeah, so it was the end, I think, of 2021, right after the We Need Diverse Books
after I did
workshop.
my story.
Yeah, and I am just now coming to a place where I'm regaining my excitement and my vision for it, and where I'm committing to like this next revision will be it, period. And we're actually going to talk about that kind of like nowish. Is there a time frame for WIP being done? So hashtag First Fantasy has been with me since I was 16. I am 27. Is there a time frame? Should it be 2 months? Should it be 2 years? Like, here Shay go again. Every time I mention my age, she's like, "Oh my gosh,
Brandon's you're so close to 30 now." Yeah, like we were 24.
really?"
Yeah, I literally for a day, but still, it was literally like a day.
The day before my 25th. But is there a time frame for when the story should be done? Is that how you know that the WIP is done? Is it time?
So for me, I would say that like for me, I don't think a story is done, and for this done for me is like I could put it out. Like I could post it on my blog, I could put it on Wattpad, I could submit it to a submission, whatever. For it to be done for me, there are like a couple of things that have to happen. My critique partners have to have read it, and for me, I have a minimum requirement of 2 critique partners. Because I know that I have multiple and they have lives and da da da, but I want at least 2 of them to read it. Because again, critique partners mine are like really, really honest, and they will be like, "Hey, I don't understand this. Hey, this don't make sense. Hey, you doing a lot here. Hey, I need some more here." Right. And so I know that they know me and my storytelling and my writing abilities enough to know where I can be putting more energy and where I can be making the story better and where I need to like pull back and things like that. And then it's alpha/beta readers, which sometimes, which usually is like somebody who I'm like close to for an alpha reader. Because I might let them read it alongside with a critique partner, like before I went through and like done some edits. Beta readers are almost always after I've done an edit with my critique partners. Always. Like I don't, the next group of people don't ever read it until I've corrected or worked on whatever I've talked to my critique partners about, like period for me. And for beta readers for me are usually people who read in the genre or people who I know like to read in general. So it doesn't even matter if it's not their preferred genre. They just love books. So I know they're willing to read and will read. And those are important to me because that means, like for me, that's as much of checks and balances without an editor that I'm okay with. Especially for like a blog or a Wattpad, right? Like those things I don't really feel any type of way about if there was something to be like, this could have been changed. Because what? It takes me a couple of minutes to go in and change it if I really, right, feel that way. Now, if it's for submission or it's to be published, I will try to go through like, I'll do like the pro writing aid, and then I'll try to find like, I've like bartered editing services, like did a website for somebody, they edited my short story kind of thing. So I will go that far. But for me, it's not a time, it's the number of eyes that I've had on it. Now, that isn't to say that like I won't publish a story without necessary changes from the eyes that have been on it. It just means that for me, I want to be aware of however many possible ways or perspectives my work can be taken in as possible. Because the truth is, sometimes people don't change things in their stories because they meant for it to hit that way. They meant for it to be that way, right? And so I just want to make sure that like the parts that are supposed to hit are getting hit the way that they're supposed to, and that requires other people to read it, full stop. Right. It requires me to get other people's feedback and see how they interpreted specific scenes to know if I've done that. And I can't do that by myself. So that's why for me, there has to be other eyes on it. But it does not, I don't use that as a, if other people look at it and they don't like it, then I can't put it out or da-da-da. Like it's not a that thing. It's just from my own personal knowledge as a writer, right? And me and Britt have talked about this multiple times, like being like when writers get feedback from a specific community and they are not willing to hear it. Well, I don't want that issue. I want whatever issue that this community brings up to me after it's published. I've already heard it before and I'm aware of it, and I knew that that was going to be a conversation and I was okay with it type of deal. So
And I would say to that, that what Shay just described does take time. It takes time to send something to critique partners. We have schedules. We gotta, oh, can I have this in 3 weeks? You can have it in 5. Like that takes time. Responding to feedback takes time, especially when you're in those early stages. You're sending a CP your first draft and they're sending you back anything, everything. And then you go back in for the second draft, you send it to alpha readers, you may go back in for a little tinkering, or you may have someone make a really, really good point, suggesting that you really, really want to do that requires a little bit more shuffling. And then maybe you send it back to a CP to read a certain part or to read the whole thing in this revision. Then you send debate like that. That takes, if you're giving everyone a month to do that, and we'll say for the sake of this conversation that we're talking about full-length novels, so something anywhere from like 60,000 to 100,000. And we know there are things on either side of that, but just for the sake of this conversation, that for 60 to 100,000 words, you need to give people at least a month. So if we're saying at least a month for that, for the CPs for the first one, then 2 alphas, possibly back to the CPs, then to betas, that's 4 months of your story being out of your hands where you're not even working on it. It makes no sense to be working on a story that's out for feedback. Then it comes back, and if you're giving yourself, let's say for the CPs, it takes you a month to respond to it if it's a lot of feedback. And then for the alphas, it takes 2 weeks, the betas, another 2 weeks. That's 4 months of feedback, 2 months of revisions. That's 6 months after the first draft has been rendered, right? And
that's if you don't go to your CPs twice. So there's still there's so much, and that's just the minimum amount of time, right? That you would be rational. Because again, now we're not saying don't put times on yourself, because you need to hit goals and but you also need to be aware, like, these things take time.
They take time,
and rushing them, as we've seen with indie and trap pub, does nobody good. The writer suffers because the book doesn't make the money that it could have made. The readers suffer because now they have a bad taste in their mouth about the way the story continued, or the series, or this specific book. Like, it doesn't bode well for anybody in the equation. But you don't know that or realize that until after the fact, if you're not taking it into consideration during the writing process.
Exactly. And it can be frustrating, right? Because again, that's 4 months where you're just in a holding pattern. It's out of your control because other people are reading it. But again, this is the virtue of working on multiple projects at once. While something is out getting worked on, work on something else, rest yourself. Like, there are just other things to do. But as for like the time limit question, I would just say, be aware that writing does take time. And I'm saying this more to myself, to my old self, because I used to be very impatient about the writing process. But if you're going to do it well, you're going to have to eat the fact that it's going to take time if you want to go through the multiple steps of feedback and revision that it takes if you do have critique partners, if you do want alpha and beta readers. Now, if you just want to go from critique partners to editors, which is like, I'm not putting my romances through as many rounds as I put my fantasy. I don't feel it's necessary. But that's me with my writing and background, with my background in writing, with my background in literature. That's me for a smaller book with a far less complicated world, right? So that's me. And also me knowing who my critique partners are and who my editors are, and knowing that anything that I do miss, that those 2 groups could catch fine, and like maybe a beta for just like, thematic things, and then done. I don't really need alpha readers, right? But for fantasy, shoot, I might send it to betas twice. Like, I might send it to everybody twice, just different groups, just to see, because it's so much. So I've definitely had to sit with myself on the time limit question, because I've been impatient about how can I shrink this time. And we don't have to call no names of books, but we've seen books where the author was like, I wrote this in 6 months, and everyone was like, wow, wow. And then it came out and we were like, you did, huh?
I believe it, sis.
Yeah.
You right, you did.
You sure did.
I can see that it feels like 6 months. You right.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
not gonna hold you. This was a 6-month written book.
This it sure was. And you did that. Hashtag NaNoWriMo. But yeah. But
but low key though, because we've talked about this. Like the first book be so good, but it's because you've been writing it for like 5, 6, 7, 9, 15 years. And then this next one,
you wrote it in 12 months.
And like there's a clear difference.
There is. There is. And again, that I say this is a plug for having a solid team of CPs. They got like, I feel like myself and a couple of my CPs have a very well-rounded team and that we have people who are really, really good, like plot trackers. They are plot PIs. Okay, Shay is a plot PI. If something is, if some math ain't mathing, she got a calculator, she got an abacus, a TI 85, honey, she's tracking. But
I am not going to let you say, she said an abacus. I'm done. We went to an abacus and a TI 85. First of all,
it's the range.
It's the range for me. It is the range for me. Totally. Honestly, it's the range.
She has all of her tools for plot PIing, and she gonna find it. And then I have a critique partner she has an MFA in writing, and that's where I met her actually. And she's a beautiful writer, a poet. Like she's been published in a couple of magazines. Like she really helps me think about sentence construction and craft from a very like wordsmith place, right? And then I have critique partners who are super into fantasy, and they're with me on like, oh, this magic system, and oh, this can't like, right? So it's pretty well rounded. And then for them, they have a CP who's super editorial, who will be like, yeah, let's vary the length of these sentences a little bit, or this voice is sounding unnatural. Like if this is dialogue, it shouldn't sound like a narrator. Like let's shift the voices. Let's talk about the semantics of the narrator's voice and their tone and a character's tone, right? Like that's me. So for them, if a CP told me I'm gonna write a book in 6 months, I would be like, first of all, why? But second of all, it would be like, all right, well, let's talk about the schedule for how you're going to be able to get the most out of your team.
Mean the first draft in 6 months? I see you. That would be I think I'd be like, that's good. They have to tell me some more for me to think that they meant like publish the whole book.
From idea to publishing, because why?
Yeah, no.
If it's not a romance,
I would be like, you're gonna stress yourself out. Like before we even get to anything else, I'd be like, that doesn't sound good for your mental health. Would be my literal first thing.
Literally, I'd be like, for what? Who's asking you to do this? And can you tell them no? You should tell them no. If it's yourself, you should tell yourself no. So first of all, we would be like, I don't suggest that. But I think that there is value in knowing who's on your team who can help you to do that well, because maybe no tea, no shade, maybe tea shade, but actually no tea, no shade, genuine curiosity. When I see a book come out of Stratpub and it's an author who's past their first book, which we know means they're past the point of being able to spend 15 years on a book, we get it. That's just, there's no way to get around that. Like there's a difference between working on a book that no one's looking for and being in the middle of a series and having deadlines. We understand that. When I see a book come out, and you know what? We can just give an example. So Tomi Adeyemi's second book in her Children of Blood and Bone series, listen to me. I'm gonna tell you straight, I didn't read it. And I didn't not read it because of any like angst or anger or da-da-da. Like I wasn't into the first one, so I was like, I'm gonna head out. It was also super long, and I was like, I'm not in the mood for super long fantasy an epic fantasy, I'm gonna head out. So that was me. I didn't have nothing with her, and I stopped reading it before she started showing her behind on social media. So there was no connection for me. I was just like, I'm good. But one of my critique partners, well, two of them actually, read Children of Blood and Bones, loved it, and then Children of Virtue and Vengeance were like, So, and then one of them who did just get through with an editorial internship was like, I was sitting there with a red pen correcting it. Now, you're out of the reading experience when you over here grading a book, a published book with a binding and a cover and a copyright page. So my genuine question is, do y'all not have critique partners? When I see books like that
not
come
even
out,
that. No. My question ain't even that, because we know you had to go through editors. I just want to know who edited your book personally, because it's not for me. I'm not even holding your CPs. I'm holding the editor who was like, this is cool, because that should have been the end all be all.
But I have a conspiracy about that anyway.
Right. We already have our thoughts on why stuff like that happens and whatnot anyway.
Okay, and who it happens to, because get out of here.
Because book 2 was like half the size of book 1. Like it was a lot. And it went into like, I hope you don't do what I think you're gonna do. Because like,
at the end, yeah, I've heard so many people be like, don't take it there.
If you do what I think you're gonna do,
done.
Because remember, I started reading it before I was ever a part of the BookTube community. So I didn't know all of the other stuff that came with her. I didn't follow her on social media. I didn't do, because I didn't come from a generation where you go follow authors on social media. Like you just read.
That wasn't even an option.
Right. There wasn't a thing, right? Yeah. Like it was like the most you knew about them is whatever they decided to put in
on that little book jacket. That's it.
Right, that was literally it. You didn't even get states. You got Pacific Northwest or whatever. Like they were not giving you all that information, right? You just did not know.
Read the book, go about your business.
Right, so I read it without any idea, and I was like, "Oh, I really like this first one." But it was also my first fantasy. I had not read anything
even before NK.
Yeah, this is before NK. Wait, no. This is after NK. So I'd never read like
a young adult
fantasy. And when I read NK, I read The Broken Earth, which is more sci-fi.
Yeah.
So I hadn't I hadn't read any fantasy because I didn't read the Inheritance trilogy till you told me about it.
Oh, really?
Remember, because it was like the first year that we were like getting to know each other or whatever, and you were like, I feel like it was.
Oh, I did go hard for that trilogy. I was like, everybody must read this.
And I was like, I hadn't got to it, but I wanted to, and then I finished it. I feel like that's what happened. If it didn't, it was very shortly after that I met you, or I met you shortly after I read it. I know it wasn't long ago, is all I'm saying. It was. Anyways, regardless, it was the first fantasy that I'd ever read. And so I was like intrigued by the idea of like magic and how people have different powers and so it was really a vast bit of world building in that first book and whatnot. And then you get to the second one and it's all over the place, and none of these sentences are making sense, and none of these scenarios are making sense. And it's just like, why did you throw these sex scenes in here? Like, there's just so much. It's just, I don't even understand. Yeah, like both of the girls, I feel like both of them have sex, or one of them has sex in book 2. Yeah. And again, I'm an adult. Teenagers having sex makes me feel uncomfortable to read about. But that's just me. I don't know how anybody else feel. I'm just not okay with it. I don't like to watch shows with teenagers having sex. Like, it just, I'm grown. I don't care, is how I feel about it. And so I remember just being like, yo, this. And I didn't know it took her way less time to write this one than the first one. Like, I didn't know everything I know about Trap Pub Now or any of the other stuff. And so, like, even, I mean, this is 2019 when I read this book, y'all, book 3 still ain't here. Now, will book 3 be amazing because she took her time and wrote it out? Who knows? Because it is definitely giving close to, it's been 5 years and whatnot, it's giving us some time. But do you really even have that option in Trap Up? No, you don't.
No, you be in breach of contract. So I'm just like, what is going on?
Right. Like, how does her contract work? Like, I didn't questions that need answered.
But also, I mean, with the reception for book 2, they're probably like, hey, yo, take your time.
Right.
Don't let us rush you.
Exactly. Take your time, because book 2 didn't do what we thought we were gonna like.
Hello?
And you
And
probably got a bunch of sales off of people who are so excited for the
then they
second
just
book, and they just jump. Right. And again,
and she's on $1 million advance per book. I think they were like, no. Take
was
your
it
time.
million for the whole thing or for each book?
I don't remember. But $1 million is $1 million. So
$1 million is $1 million. It's a lot. Right. It
they're
is.
like, baby, don't let us rush you.
Right.
Because you like, if she still is not gonna, whatever the benchmarks are for her getting paid out, they're probably like, yeah, take your time and we'll start paying you again when you start meeting these benchmarks again. But like, take your time so you can actually earn out this advance. We would like to see this money back and more. Although unfortunately she's missed the wave of like Black Panther that she came out on, like that. It's been years. So that all that energy from Black Panther anyway is gone, and now her book,
Right.
that trilogy
Wakanda
has
Forever
a
came out too. Like Black Panther 2 that came out in the time
came
frame.
and went. Like you're in a completely different era as far as that. But you know, whatever. But my point is, Shay and I already have tinfoil hat conspiracies about why they've been letting traditionally published Black writers put out books that do not seem well edited at all, though they had to have gone through an editor. And that is why I say, especially for Black writers, because I'm for us. I'm rooting for everybody Black, as Issa Rae said, everybody Black. You need a good team of critique partners, because these editors may or may not be for you like they're contracted to be. That's it. However I feel, and I don't have anything about coming out of me. She don't pay my bills, I don't pay hers. Like it's nothing. Her book 2 should not have come out like that. It should not have. It just shouldn't be possible for her book to come out like that, having gone through a professional freaking editor. No way. So I'm saying get you a well-rounded group of CPs, because we hope that editors in TradPub or, you know, in indie that you contract with yourself, we hope that they do a good job. But until we see their work and we see their work with us, we don't know that. But I'll tell you what, not a single one of my critique partners will ever put out a book where someone is red mark. No way. Before it even goes to the editor, I'm still, one of my critique partners who was agented sent me a book and was like, this is going to an editor, so you don't need to go in. And did I go in? No, but I stuck my toe in, because I was just like, there are just some things that if you have a critique partner,
I don't want to run the risk of expecting this person to catch it
and then they don't.
No,
I'm gonna just put a bug in your ear on these different things, and the editor could take you the rest of the way. That's it.
We've talked about, like, it's like, to me, it is a representation of you and your team.
Hello?
It is a representation of you and your team. And at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to look at my critique partners and be like, they let her do this.
Because that be my question when I see these
that
books.
Be
I'm
right.
like, where's your team?
Where did it?
And I don't mean your team of people that you got in Trap. I'm talking about where are the people that helped you with the first book
and are with you behind the scenes. The people that other people don't necessarily know about.
Where they at?
Because
were their calendars full? Could they not look at this? What happened?
Right. Because I read last summer, I beta read a book for one of our trad author friends. That book doesn't even have a publication date yet. And I read it last summer. We are in this summer, right? You can take your time. You should take your time. You should. Because
and that's about planning.
It's your baby.
Right.
Who want to give birth to a premature baby on purpose? Nobody. We want them all to see it to the fruition. Yes. We want them all to make it them 36 to 40 weeks they need to be here. We want that.
We want chubby babies with
healthy
good health.
Babies out in the world. Like,
take your time, full gestation, please.
In which the way these things work is solely greed. So if you are not allowing yourself to be wrapped up into that, Because that's the only reason. Oh, this book got real big success. Let's put the next one out 6 months so we can make some more money and we don't lose this hype behind this book. Nah. Because the
Or
truth
even
of
a
the matter
year,
is,
you don't have to.
real
There are
fans is
authors
gonna
who
buy
are
it. Do you
18-month
know how long
contracts.
we waited for the world we make?
Who
When
are
you
they?
a real fan, N.K. Jemisin, the sequel to The City We Became, like that took a little bit. It was a little bit, and not only did we find out, it went from a trilogy to a duology.
Oh,
Real fans are still gonna be right there supporting and getting the story. Full stop.
because the writing is good.
The
We
writing
know we're
is
waiting
good.
for quality.
The
I don't want a
storytelling
microwave
is
meal.
good.
Put it in a crock pot. I want all the seasoning stopped up in there.
Right. And the truth of the matter is even with Trad Pub, sometimes people don't find your best work until years later.
Hello. You're on your second, third,
Truthfully,
fourth book or series.
N.K. Jemisin had written 6 books by the time she got that first Hugo.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that those other books weren't great. So you gotta also be okay with, like, sometimes there won't be a wave for you to ride. That wave will come back around. If you are solely only doing this to ride the wave, to get this check, like, you don't understand how art works to begin with, because music, movies, everything, some of the best things don't hit right off the bat.
Yeah, it takes time.
It takes time.
It takes time and environment, and that stuff can't be rushed. It's organic.
No.
So especially if you're indie, you don't have a lot of marketing money put behind it. Like, it just may take time. But what I want to be sure of is whenever they do find me, the backlist is quality.
It's quality.
They're like, oh, who is this? Oh, it's bang after bang after bang. You're right.
Right.
Because that's all that's available. Ain't no half-baked cookies going out into the world. It's going to be, and that's the thing about being done. Right? We're saying be aware of the time, just because the time elapsed can make you lose sight of your who and your why. But don't rush something out into the world past all of your quality control. Right? Past your critique partners, past alpha readers, past sensitivity readers, past beta readers, past copy editors, proofreaders, developmental editors. Like, don't do that, because it ultimately proves a waste of time. What you can write something in only 6 months and still end up wasting a whole 6 months putting a book out that needed 3 more months. So that 6 months you spent was wasted because the story flopped, because readers were like, what's this? Right? So, like, it doesn't matter how quickly you do it, that time will still be wasted if you do not put out quality. Because in most genres, there are some genres where people don't care about quality, they're just there for smut. But in most genres, the writing needs to be good. So that's what that was a whole little sermon break. But that's what I think we would say for, is there a time frame? Use your discretion. There's not a time frame, but there are time frames to consider, but there's not necessarily a time frame for when it is done. More of a checklist that comes with a time frame. Right. And so finally, lessons we have learned from finishing or not finishing a story. Shay, I'm gonna kick it to you.
So my thing has to do with when the story is done. I think that one of the biggest issues is being like, I don't want my book to come out and I find like all these mistakes and da da da. And the truth of the matter is you're gonna find at least one. Like, because we're human. And humans are who are reading and correcting all of this. And we're going to overlook something. And so if you are waiting for complete perfection, no mistakes, no errors, nothing that you can change, you're going to be waiting for forever, is the first part. The second part about that is, it's not healthy. This is just not. It's just not healthy. But like, the truth of the matter is you're supposed to always be growing as a writer. So if you look back and you can't find anything you change about a story, you probably weren't doing a good job anyways. Because the truth of the matter is there's always a way a story could have been better. But was it the best that it could be then? That, for me, is something that I feel like is super duper important. Because when I was writing the story that went into that anthology, I had gotten feedback like after I'd already sent it in, and I was beating myself up about it. Like completely. I was so upset. I was like, I think I'm gonna just tell him I don't even want to be in the anthology. And this is it, because it was really, really respected feedback. So I don't disregard the feedback at all or anything like that. And because it is from someone I really, really respected, is part of the reason why I took it to heart so much. Similarly to Brit's situation, like when it's someone that you like, you not to say you put on a pedestal, but you do respect where they're coming from and the catalog of things they have behind them, to be like, wow, well, if they think this, maybe it's not where I thought it was, because they do have this experience that although I have CPs, they don't have this same experience. So it makes you reconsider and rethink about everything that you thought, that you felt about your work. And the truth of the matter is, no matter it's a CP, it's a beta reader, it's somebody you respect, it's somebody in the industry, nobody knows your story like you. Nobody knows the theme, the characters, the things that you want to convey in that story like you. You have to be okay with the fact that somebody else might find something in it that they don't agree with, something in it that they think could be changed, something. You have to be okay with it. And you have to be okay with the fact that your baby, just like you, is going to be imperfect. But is it perfect enough for you? Right? Like that to me is just the biggest thing. Finishing projects, watching my CPs finish projects, watching people I respect finish projects. Like even Lizelle, we love Lizelle. Lizelle has said that if she, like, things that she would change is she wouldn't say slave, she'd say enslaved person. She wouldn't say dread, she'd say locks. Like there are just things that you would change when you know better, when you get more experience. And that's the truth, right? That doesn't take away from the awesomeness that is Bloodlight Magic. That doesn't take away from it at all. But it is an acknowledgement that, hey, time changed. I learned something. If I knew then what I know now, these are adjustments I'd make. And they are not huge adjustments by any stretch of the imagination, but they are important to us. And that's why we see them. And that's why we make the changes going forward, right? Like the changes of the language from dreads to locks, the change of language from slave to enslaved person. It changes drastically, right? But somebody who's not Black isn't going to see that or know that. They're not going to understand the connotations of that, right? So it's just, again, I feel like I'm like dragging on a little bit, but still, like, just perfection is going to be the defeat of your story, because there's not going to be absolute perfection. And that's okay. That doesn't make it any less of a great story.
No. And I think that leads really smoothly into mine, because it's when I hear perfection, I think about like the word perfection in the Bible. And when we see perfection in the Bible, it's not talking about without mistake, it's talking about maturity. And so we talk about our books being our babies and we want them to be perfect, mature, right? Like we want the story to be mature. We want it to be sophisticated. Or now, like if you're writing middle grade, you like the goals change, but you want the story to be full grown. And that doesn't mean that there won't ever be anything. I hope that 10 years from now, I can look back and say, I could put out First Fantasy right then and just change X, X, and X, and it would have been perfect. I hope that I can look back 10 years from now, look at courting, look at hashtag first romance, and be like, yeah, I got a little slip. Look at hashtag first romance and be like, this was a really good first book to put out. I might change X and X, but live and learn. Like I hope that I can have both that wiser perspective and that piece that comes with being a mature writer, to know there's always going to be something that you can change either the second after you submit or 2 years later. But that's not the point. The point is that story was full grown and it did what it needed to do. And so for me, when it comes to lessons, it's having project goals helps with a sense of finality. And that goes back to that maturity. So my romances do a very particular thing. They have very particular goals under a theme. Tales of Eliza Black is tussling with certain themes. Hashtag first fantasy, and all of my fantasies have themes between characters and the overall arcs. And if those themes are met, if the relationship between those sisters does what I want it to do, if the mythos of that world gets at what I want it to get at, then there may be things that I'm like, oh, I wish I would have chosen a different word here, or oh my gosh, I wanted to make the language sing in this fight scene and I just could not get it to that tone. But the sisters are like their relationship is what I wanted it to be. The mythos of the world opens those conversations. The language is going to evolve as I evolve. The themes are going to sing over time. That stuff takes practice. But are the themes matured? Is the story full grown? Then I'm good. And that has really helped me with a sense of finality and lessened my anxiety around perfectionism, because it's not about zero mistakes. It's not about everything being a 10 out of 10 out of 10 across every category. It's about the themes being met. And if the themes are met, then the story is full grown and it's time for her to walk around in the world. And that is the biggest and most recent lesson that I have learned that has really empowered me and incited or maybe reignited my sense of urgency to put stories out in the world, that I don't have to wait for them to be 10s across the board. I am just raising a story to be full grown. And when they are full grown, it is their responsibility to walk out in the world and make mistakes and recover and to grow. And that's what happens when writers write, right? You practice and you become better, and the next child you put out is a little bit sharper in certain ways, and 10 years later, look where you've gotten. But you have to start with actually like producing a story and letting it go so you can have hindsight eventually. You're never going to have hindsight on a story that you never actually let go. So I think that is the biggest lesson I have learned, is learning the spirit that helps me to let go and to move forward with finality. So I said, well, this is going to be a 30-minute conversation, and then we went off.
It's definitely almost an hour. It's definitely almost an hour. I'm sorry.
Sorry. We went off.
But we definitely didn't need no extra questions.
We didn't.
We didn't know extra questions. We got it.
We did.
We just finished. Little girl, go. We just finished. You're like, oh, you done? You done?
I heard doneness. Is that accurate? So we didn't put as many comment prompts in here for y'all, but if you've made it this far, comment finality. No, comment maturity. Comment maturity.
Maturity.
That is the goal, for our stories to be mature, not for them to be perfect. And that is the biggest lesson that I have learned. And I think that is the lesson I needed to learn to go back to hashtag first fantasy. And it took me 2 years. So back to time frame, there's a checklist of things. And on that checklist is I got to be cool with the story. And that takes longer than others, depending on what the story is and what it brings out of you. Like there are things, but a checklist is most important. I think more important than like a hard time frame. Thank y'all for joining us. I hope that y'all were able to comment live. If you were watching the premiere live with us, thank you so much. If you're watching on the replay, thank you so much. Everyone smash that like button. If you have nothing to say, just comment maturity. But we would also love to hear lessons that y'all have learned from finishing or not finishing WIPs. How did you negotiate that? We love to know.
Or even as readers, if there's like books that you know that you like, I could tell this book didn't take as long to write as this other book.
Not full grown.
That you have seen that out. Yeah, like let us know. We're definitely intrigued, and y'all know we love conversation. So go ahead and start some in the comments.
Share. Any closing things?
No. Hopefully we got a surprise for y'all next month. Hopefully. So, make sure you subscribe to both of us and hit that notification bell.
That's the only way you'll know the fresh tea. Otherwise, by the time you get to it, it'll be cold.
Cold, and
not ice, just cold.
It's going to be hot. If it's one thing, it's going to be hot when we give it to you.
And on that note, now we're about to be ending this meeting. On that note,
let's stop recording.
Right, just disappearing.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, bye then, girl, I guess.
She's the only one on the screen, like, what just
Nah, because it's gonna tell me leaving in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 when you
Will
do
it?
it does. As
Oh,
soon
that'd
as
be
you click leave
dramatic.
meeting, it's like the person is into this meeting. 5, 4, 3.
Oh, these are the techie things that happen when we record, y'all. Welcome to the madness. And thank you for watching. We can't wait. Like the writerly conversations have been good all year. We're into some nitty gritty. I can't stand you. I just want you to know. We're about to be in some nitty gritty conversations like this one that we hope get specific enough to really help you with writing your stories. Or we talked about a lot of just like topical things, categorical things, looking at Morrison, and that we love that, right? We love talking about the craft, but we also love talking about the specific challenges of writing. So
Right.
keep with us for the rest of the year because we are from the macro to the micro. So we will see y'all next month. Lord willing, the creek don't rise. Bye.